Alrighty, just like that. So we are sitting, for those of you watching, you might be able to see the lovely green in the background. We're at Kumite Jiu Jitsu today. I'm here with Ari Tabak, or Ariel Tabak is the full name, I'm guessing.
Yes, Ariel Tabak.
Yep. So try and speak. You know, if you want to bring it up on your lap, that's what I would probably do. That's the easiest way. So Ari, for those who don't know you, how would you describe yourself?
How would I describe myself? I am an individual who loves jiu-jitsu and has dedicated his life to training and teaching the art of jiu-jitsu. I guess, to put it short.
That's a pretty intense way to put it. It's like, jiu-jitsu is my life, basically.
Yeah. Look, I don't know how else to describe myself, and I guess a bit quiet and socially awkward.
Yep.
Yeah, which sounds like every jiu-jitsu guy.
They're the two things that are cool in jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Steroids and autism.
Yep, steroids and autism. Just have one of them, and it's not steroids.
So, okay, now you've been on other podcasts before, so I guess, the flavor of how I like to do things is I like to go through a little bit of a chronology of what happened in your life and what's gotten us to this point of starting Kumite as an example. But for those who don't know your family was originally from South Africa, is that correct?
Yeah, so on my dad's side, he's born in South Africa. His whole family's from South Africa. Their ancestry, from my understanding, is from like Lithuania and Latvia. And then on my mum's side, so my mum was born in Israel. Her family did live in Israel for a bit, but as a whole, she lived most of her life actually in Brazil. Most of her family is actually from Brazil as well. And if you go like quite far up the family tree, I believe her ancestry is from, Europe and I think Rome, I believe. Yeah, Rome. So Rome, yeah. So there's a bit of I guess more like European background. Actually, I believe on her dad's side, there is some Ukrainian ancestry. So I think overall, I'm probably more like Eastern European ancestry-wise. I'm not sure.
The boys at the door.
What we should do with that.
Josh is like doing sorry, those who don't know what we're looking at Josh Allsop at the door, and he's looking at potentially showing somebody through while we're in the middle of this podcast. How you going?
Hey guys.
That's all right, no stress. So, how many years did you spend in South Africa before coming to Australia?
Literally just 2 years. So I was born in South Africa in 94, and then 96 we moved to New Zealand, and then I was in New Zealand for about 4.5 years, so the ages of 2 till about 6, and then 2001 we moved to Australia and been in Australia since.
Wow.
So yeah.
So do you remember? So you wouldn't have any real memories of South Africa, right?
No memories of South Africa. I do plan eventually going back to visit, but pretty much no memories of South Africa.
And then what about New Zealand then?
New Zealand, I definitely have more memories. I was brought up in Wellington, went to a school in a suburb. I believe the suburb was called Kelburn. Sounds like Melbourne.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have some memories from there. But aside from that, I feel like I achieved full consciousness in Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah. Okay. So,
yeah.
So what age were you when you finally landed in Melbourne? You would have been, what, 6 or 8?
I was 6.
6.
6, yeah.
And do you remember what school was like?
Yeah, I do. School was kind of scary initially. Didn't know anyone, and I remember because I was one of those kids that was born in February, so I noticed like a lot of kids that were born like earlier in the year, they would have this choice essentially of being in the year below or the year above. So I could have stayed with most of the other kids that were born, in 94, but I guess a few months before me. So I was potentially going to repeat year 1, and I don't know, it didn't feel right for me at the time, so I chose to go up to the 2nd grade. So I went straight into 2nd grade when I moved to Australia. Didn't know anyone, and was still kind of, I guess, adjusting to, I don't know, Australia and New Zealand felt sort of different. Hard to describe, I guess, but I was still, I guess, adjusting to that.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a really close friend back in New Zealand, like my best mate. And I remember I was really bummed out about moving to Australia. So I was in my head, I was like planning to move back to New Zealand. You know,
as a 6-year-old?
As a 6-year-old, I was like, oh, eventually I'll get back to New Zealand. But obviously that never happened. But yeah, I always fondly remember that, like, really wanting to go back to my good friend. His name was Zach, good friend Zach. I was always really wanting to go back to New Zealand to hang out with him, but never happened, unfortunately.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to look him up to see where he is?
Actually, I think I did. But I don't know. I mean, I probably should reach out to him, but such a long time ago, you know, like I'm 30 now, and we were like 5 maybe at the time, I think.
I'll tell you a funny story about this, right? So I did a podcast with Ian Schaffer, who used to fight, you know, mixed martial arts, one of the, I guess, early days Australian MMA fighters. And it was funny. I had this guy message me on Instagram, and he goes, Johnny, I think we went to primary school together.
Oh, wow.
And so he reached out. So shout out to Angela. I'm going to catch up with him because, like, literally, yeah, like he was I remember, I'll tell you this funny story. He was my Greek mate when we were in, like, primary school.
Yeah.
And I remember I went over to his house one time, and he was, like, teaching me all the bad Greek words. You know, he was like malaka and malaka pusti and all this sort of stuff. And Josh, what are you doing? He's like undressing behind us. Anyway, the camera's facing this way, so you can spare your eyes. But anyway, so it was really cool for to have, like, you know, Angelo reach out to me, and like I'm gonna catch up with him for coffee and just sort of see, you know, like after all these years, because I probably didn't see him after primary school. Right. And so you're like, what, 13 or so when you leave primary school?
Yeah.
I'm 40 now. So that's like 27 years of life has gone between that time.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually really curious to see, you know, what's happened in his life in those 27 years, right?
Yeah.
So
man, that would be a very surreal moment for you. Just
drop my water. Anyway, you all right, Josh?
Did you say see you in court?
Yeah. He's giving me shit. Anyway.
Yeah, I can imagine it'll be is such a surreal moment catching up with someone that you haven't seen for 27 years. That's for some of us, that's such a long period of time. Such a long period of time, you know, not seeing someone. And a lot changes.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. And like you don't even think about it because a lot of the times the people who, like whether it's your family and things like that, like you see them on a regular basis. So the changes are very slight. You know, and as a dad, you probably see this as well. Like as your child grows up, you know, you always see them as your little baby, even though they change so much, right? But then when you have this stark contrast of like seeing somebody from the past that you haven't seen in such a long time,
it's like the contrast is really like emphasized when there's like that big gap, as opposed to seeing someone like every day. Yeah.
Anyway, so my point is, you should reach out to Zach.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to find out how life has gone. Have you been back to Wellington since?
I haven't. I've been back to New Zealand though. Been to Auckland, but it's just usually for stopovers. I think last time actually we were there for maybe it was 1 or 2 nights. We did a few seminars. I believe it was last year, or maybe the year before that. But we were just in Auckland, and that was it. It was a short trip. Yeah.
Fair enough.
But definitely need to do a proper trip back to New Zealand and revisit, you know, the hometown and everything. It'll be nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then when it came to like the schooling in Melbourne, so, you know, obviously there was a bit of a culture shock and an adjustment from New Zealand to Australia and Melbourne.
Yeah.
But what was primary school like for you? Did you find that you managed, after you settled in, you know, did you manage to find many friends? And
I mean, the first hurdle was having people...
Josh, when you come on the podcast, you know that everybody's going to be, Ari's going to be in the background giving you shit.
He put like in big text on his phone, "No one will believe you," and then made sure to show that to me. He's probably right. So the first thing was having to deal with almost every second kid asking me to say fish and chips. That was annoying. And then after we got through that, then I started to assimilate into Australian society. I remember in Melbourne, what was really big in Melbourne was AFL. That was what was considered footy. And then I remember in 2012 when I moved to Sydney in 2012, and I thought that footy was AFL, but it turns out to be rugby.
Yep.
But schooling in Australia, I think think for the most part, I found it quite difficult. I wasn't the greatest academically. It took me a while to, I guess, get the hang of things. But aside from that, I was always able to make friends. Some of my friends that I made in primary school, at this very school that I moved to in 2001, I'm still friends with today, which is quite a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you can hang on to those relationships.
Yeah. It really is. It really is.
And that's despite moving from Melbourne to Sydney?
Despite moving from Melbourne to Sydney, and all that time that's gone between, I think you do make some friends that these people will likely be friends for life, which is a very special thing. Yeah.
So then, you mentioned like you had to sort of adjust to the academic side of things. What was it about the academics that was it English or maths that you struggled with, or was it like
I would say
the teaching
it
style?
was pretty much every subject. I feel like I only started to really catch on to, I guess, how academics worked when I was maybe in, say, the 8th grade, year 8 or year 9. So it took me a while, long period of time of struggling with academics. I think just in general, I have a tendency to be a slow learner, which is ironic because I'm a coach, and I focus on teaching people a lot. But I think that throughout my childhood, I've notoriously been a slow learner. I'm sure there are other things that I was picking up quickly, but for the most part, my perception of myself academically took me a while to grasp certain concepts. Yeah.
Do you remember what your report cards used to say? What did the teachers used to say about you?
I particularly remember in primary school, I moved to another school in later primary school just because simply my parents couldn't really justify sending me to a private school in primary school. They were like, it's not really going to do much. Yeah, they my dad was really adamant on putting me in a private school in my high schooling years, for the sake of getting a high ATAR score, etc. So that was the plan that he went with. But primary school, I went to a public school, and I actually really enjoyed that as well. But I do remember, particularly with the report cards, teachers mentioning how I struggled to pay attention and to stay focused. So that was that. I actually do also remember particular instances in school where I would be dozing off, and my teacher would, kind of check to see if I was listening, and she would ask me a question in front of the entire class, which I would obviously fail to correctly answer. And I remember that would really stick with me. I would think, oh man, I really need to stay awake, stay awake and pay attention. But I would say that was like the main thing. And then, just grasping concepts and understanding things that were being taught, because I could see very clearly that my fellow peers would generally understand the stuff quite easily. Yeah, actually, it's something that I noticed kind of carried over into my university years. I always noticed that I would need to spend a lot more time, focusing on a particular concept or topic to understand it, as opposed to some of the other people in my class that would catch on to it really quickly.
Why do you think that is? Like, is that like and the reason why I ask is, I think about, when it comes to my kids learning things, right? Like every kid has a different personality. There are kids that can pick up concepts very, very, very easily, and they have this ability to make inferences.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas there are other children that struggle to make the same connections.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what it actually is, because I obviously went down rabbit holes of different learning styles, and I noticed that I never particularly was good at one particular learning style, or rather, there was no particular learning style that really helped me. I found it was a combination of both. But then I would sometimes question as well if it was just a matter of time, focusing on the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
was it a repetition thing, or?
I think so. I think that with me with academics, it was a lot of it was purely repetition based. But I do also remember instances, and I'm also now thinking about my university years when I was studying physio. I found that I would put a lot of emphasis on repetition, but then, as expected, when I understood fundamentally, or the concept or principle behind what was being taught, if I understood that, then I would be able to be a lot more efficient in my learning process. But the issue was being able to understand the concept or principle being taught in the first place. But yeah, I do remember especially late high school and university years just really being focused on repetition to be able to retain information. And it's pretty brutal because I would spend a long period of time just focusing on repetition, and it was a very grueling process, but it would work in the end. But yeah, much prefer just being able to conceptually understand something.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to segue just for a moment just to ask the question of that focus on trying to understand the concept. Was that something that when it came to learning jiu-jitsu, was that something that you struggled with as well, like in the early days of learning?
Yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing with jiu-jitsu. That was probably the one thing that I didn't really struggle picking up and learning. I think that's also what really drew me to it as well. I found that it was quite easy for me to learn stuff in jiu-jitsu. And so there's just that thing where, you know, when something is easy to pick up and you can see a very clear like progress and development, that it's going to encourage you to continue doing it.
Yeah. So
I found that with jiu-jitsu, that was like one of the first things that I found was very easy for me to learn. To the point where now if I ever watch a technique being demonstrated, it's almost like I can see, I guess, the underlying concept of the technique, or like the core like mechanic of the technique that makes it work. And I do notice to other people it's not as obvious, which is, I don't know, it's kind of an ironic thing, because I would kind of feel the opposite way in my academic years, where my peers would clearly see like the concept or understand whatever underlying principle was being taught. But for me, it was almost like invisible to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that, because I say the same thing about like whether it's a striking martial art or any sort of mixed martial arts. You know, there's like the base layer. You know, you can look at it from a very simple perspective of a punch is a punch, a kick is a kick.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you can go to a deeper layer, which might be related to position, might be related to angle.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like from a jiu-jitsu perspective, you obviously do that very, very well in sort of understanding what is the mechanic or the concept being applied here. Whereas I think, you know, it's difficult because there's so many moving pieces, right?
Yeah.
To then go and isolate what is the order of priorities.
Yeah.
Right?
What is the one piece that you focus on in that move?
Yeah.
You know, and some people will focus on the wrong piece, and it'll make it a lot harder for them to learn the move.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, what was high school like for you?
High school was actually pretty fun. I feel like I went through periods of wanting to be part of the crowd and the majority, and then actually towards the end of high school wanting to also do my own thing. I think towards the end of high school I really started to value having few close friends as opposed to many acquaintances. Whereas in my early years of high school I was the opposite. I guess more of like a social climber, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any particular, you know, event or something that changed that for you? Like,
I think the process of, because I started jiu-jitsu in high school halfway through 2009. So I feel like that whole process of getting into the modern martial arts scene, I don't know, I think it kind of made me shift some of my core intrinsic values in terms of just having, you know, friends, or rather which friends I would choose to have in my life, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then out of curiosity then, when it came to your high school teachers and your high school reports, like what would they say about you in high school?
In high school, I think that as I drew closer to year 12, I really put a lot of emphasis on my studies in high school, because I kind of took the path of wanting to have as high an ATAR as possible. And mind you, like, I was not talented academically. Like I said, I struggled to understand things. Even sometimes would struggle to retain memory. So I really put this, like, I set a very high bar for myself in terms of trying to get a high ATAR. I didn't end up getting a high ATAR, but I made it a goal to get as high a score as possible, and I put a lot of effort into my studies. So I think towards like I think if you looked at my high school reports throughout the years, I think it was, they probably started off pretty poor in, say, start of high school, 7th grade, and then towards the end, it was, I wouldn't say I was having the best success academically, but I think that what my teachers really appreciated was that there was intention to try and work and improve and put the time into actually, do better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did your parents ever, put any pressure on you in terms of like what they wanted you to do?
I think that there was no specifics, but I think like growing up culturally, I knew that I kind of remember as a teenager having this light bulb moment of if you want to do well in life, you probably want to be doing, I don't know, medicine or law. So I remember initially I set the bar.
You're not Asian?
Yeah, I remember initially I set the bar really high, because that's the other thing as well. Like when, in my instance, I had no life experience, so I just kind of looked at what the generic career pathways were, and then I thought, okay, which is one that is very respected and does well? How can I guarantee that I will do like well financially? And I looked at law and medicine, and I thought I probably won't be a lawyer. But I always had an interest in the human body and anatomy, so I stuck with medicine. And then the more I kind of looked into the requirements of getting into medicine, I remember I went to a UMAT course to sit that test, and I remember being so discouraged from doing the UMAT. And then I thought, I still like anatomy and physiology, and I kind of like sports and stuff. So what's the closest thing to that? And then it was physio. So then I was like, look, physio, still pretty high score. It's like you need a score in the 90s to enter. Let's give it a go. At least it's not like 99.99 like the medicine requirement was.
Yeah.
I ended up getting only 89.7, which really bummed me out, because I was like 0.3 from
Getting a 90.
From getting 90. So I literally felt like I failed year 12 when I remember I was actually in Sydney when I got the score, and it said 89.7, and I was like, yeah, I didn't make it. But I remember getting the offers for university, and I got health science and dietetics in Melbourne. And then I think it was a few weeks later, I got an offer for physiotherapy at ACU, Australian Catholic University. And I'm not sure exactly why I got it, because from memory, you needed to have an ATAR of over 90. But I think they factored in certain things, like if you're applying interstate, because I did my high school in Melbourne. And then as well, if you, I think depending on some of the subjects, I mean, that's just my interpretation of it. I did quite well in health, human development, and physical education, and I think maybe they factored that in. I'm not sure, but yeah, I kind of felt like I really didn't deserve to even qualify to do the physiotherapy course, and that stuck with me throughout like most of the degree, and then I still managed to finish it, like thankfully.
What was that an incentive to try harder or to try less?
I think it was an incentive to try harder. I always had this feeling of just I don't know, maybe I definitely had this feeling of imposter syndrome the entire time I was at uni. I felt like I wasn't really academically, or rather I didn't feel intellectually worthy of doing that degree. I still did well in some aspects of it, but then it was a combination of that, plus also slowly realizing that it wasn't really for me, and that I also had this growing interest in jiu-jitsu, and I slowly started to realize that I wanted to make that a career. So there was this point of slowly, I started off at university thinking I was going to be a physio, and then slowly doing more and more jiu-jitsu, and eventually the two, like I kind of met this point where my desire to do physio was diminishing and my desire to do jiu-jitsu was increasing.
Yeah.
And then I still, by that time, it was almost towards the end of the degree. So I thought, might as well finish the degree.
Yep.
Might as well finish what you start, especially when a lot of money has been invested into it as well. So I finished that and then went straight to just doing jiu-jitsu full time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I don't want to talk about like, you know, what your parents would have said about that.
Yeah.
Because that would be an interesting one.
Yeah.
But because I picked up on the fact that you went to Australian Catholic University.
Yep.
Are you a Catholic? Or is that
I'm not a Catholic. I'm as some Catholics would say, I'm a heretic.
okay?
Protestant.
Yep.
I mean, I go to a I guess it's a Pentecostal church.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a Christian. Yeah.
Yep. And I guess, you know, for you, I'm always intrigued. I guess, you know, what, you know, how you value the relationship or the value of faith that it brings to your life.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm still in terms of my walk in the faith, I'm still a baby. I mean, technically, like only a little over a year now. Technically 2 years, but on paper, technically a little over a year. So I find that it's hard for me if you're talking about it in relation to like my academics. I mean, I didn't really have a faith back then.
yeah. So like, I'm curious about how you found faith then.
How I found faith.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's an interesting one. Honestly, it's so hard to I guess explain it. I can't really pinpoint exactly what it was. But there was I do remember like over time feeling this intrinsic shift towards being more and more open to the idea of just the fact that life isn't what I guess the mainstream makes it out to be. How it's just this simple thing of just dying and then ceasing to exist. I don't know, something inside me felt like there is definitely more to life than just that. Yeah, it's one that's quite hard to unpack, but all I can say is it just feels extremely right to me, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Gives you a feeling of peace.
Yeah, a feeling of peace, but it genuinely, I don't know, life makes a lot more sense. And I do know that a lot of people think that people search or people go to religion to make sense of life, almost out of an act of desperation of trying to make sense of something. But it wasn't really necessarily that. Like I wasn't looking to make sense of my life, but the more I looked into it, the more it started to make sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you know, as if anything, it's that old saying, "Seek and ye shall find," right?
Yeah.
But if you never seek, well, you never find.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to be curious to be able to ask the question in the first place to then wonder, okay, is there more to life?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing as well is I can't remember. I know the guy's an apologist, but I do remember he has this one like rationale for Christianity where he says, if the Christians are wrong, then like no big deal. You know, you just
cease to exist.
You just cease to exist, atheist style. But then if you're right, then you know you've like you have the reward. But the other thing as well is, regardless of whether it's right or wrong, you still end up living this very good and righteous life in this world. And I do think that there is a lot to say in terms of benefits of living that life in this world.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's funny because I sort of lean to this idea that, you know, there is some inherent moral compass in us all.
Yes.
You know, and there's been studies on it in the sense of like, you know, even like you go to a tribe who may have never heard of religion or anything like that.
Yeah.
And if you were to say to like a tribe's member and you say, you know, okay, Ari, you're in this tribe, here's your mate, you know, Varun.
Yeah.
You know, is it okay to kill Varun?
Yeah.
And he'd be like, no, we're friends, you know,
Yeah.
we're the same.
Yeah.
Right. But then it's like where things different. It's like, okay, well, what about Josh? He's from a different tribe. Is it all right to kill him?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, he's not human. Right. Like we go into this mode of being able to turn that person into something else.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's how they justify this idea that, you know, it's okay to kill that person because they're not the same as me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because in that unique example of a tribesperson, like we see that in today's society anyway. Right. We look at people of, you know, all walks of, whether it's faith, whether it's skin color, whether it's whatever,
Yeah.
it becomes very easy to justify, well, that person's not the same as me,
Yeah.
therefore I can do this to them.
Yes.
Whereas
yes.
if it was your friend or family, you would say, no, I could never do that to them.
Yeah.
Like, you have a moral compass there. But we apply, you know, in our, I guess, minds to try and justify things to
we
ourselves.
always try to justify.
Right? We're trying to create this justification for something that we know is wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I love this concept that was told to me many years ago about like this idea of mind chatter. And it's like, mind chatter is like your conscience.
Yes.
And your conscience is always there trying to tell you little bits and pieces.
Yep.
And the more you choose to listen to it, the more it's going to tell you. The more you choose to ignore it, the less you hear. Because like, it's like talking to somebody who's not receptive. Like, why would I continue to waste my energy trying to encourage this guy if he doesn't want to listen to it?
Yeah.
But if you want to live a better life and live a more, you know, I suppose, moral life, so to speak,
You listen to that.
you listen to the mind chatter.
Yeah.
And then every time you listen to it, it reinforces, okay, yeah, next time perhaps I should take this action. And you take that action and then you feel better about yourself.
Yeah. And if you don't, you get desensitized. You can get desensitized to that mind chatter.
Yeah.
And then reach a point where you're not listening to it.
Yeah. And the flip side, you know, is this idea that you can cause yourself what we call a moral injury. And I was introduced to this concept by a previous podcast guest, Michael Lyons, and he's talking about this idea that, you know, whether it's people in soldiers that go to war, like, and he served in the Irish Armed Forces and shared some stories about this particular siege. It's called the Siege of Jadotville. Apparently, there's a Netflix thing about it. But the point was that, you know, when you go, like, these guys that have gone and done horrendous things in war, which, you know, you can justify as, well, it's war. You know, you have to do this. But they're dealing with the symptoms afterwards, which could, you know, show as PTSD, which can show as all these other problems that you've got.
Yeah.
But, like, I guess for him, he was very big on this idea that the differentiator is, like, the PTSD is the symptom of the root cause. The root cause is the moral injury.
Yes.
The fact that you had to do something that was against your moral compass.
Yeah.
Right?
That stays with you for such a long time.
Yeah.
For a lifetime. Really.
Haunts you. Right? And, like, how do some of these people find peace? Well, some of them end up committing suicide. You know, there's all these sorts of things. And sometimes it's not even actions that you may have committed. You know, it's the feeling of, like, being helpless and not being able to influence the outcome can also cause you an injury. Like, if you were to see somebody get hit by a car, you know, it's a horrendous thing to see. But, like, you also couldn't do anything about it. But it doesn't mean that seeing that doesn't stay with you.
But that sensation of helplessness really gets to you.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of it's a very interesting idea of how if you commit something so that goes so far against your morals that you can suffer this PTSD, these consequences of going against your morals.
Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting thing, how we as humans have that, I guess, that consequence.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think it's one of those things that help to differentiate us from animals, you know?
Yeah.
And the whole idea of, I guess, of being human is that we're supposed to have this higher consciousness. You know, if we're made in the image of God, so to speak.
Yes.
There's that piece of God within us that, you know, an animal, a beast doesn't have to feel any remorse. You know, so you can choose to live your life like a beast. And perhaps, you know, in days gone past, we were probably more in tune with that.
Yeah.
But as society progresses and we have this opportunity to then better ourselves, like perhaps that's what, you know, achieving enlightenment or whatever you want to call it is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right?
I definitely think that we have like a state of consciousness that definitely exceeds that of animals. Like, it makes sense. And going back to the whole thing of being made in the image of God, I think that's like a great example.
Yeah. So when you decided that you want to go full-time into jiu-jitsu, now, I guess to put this in context, right, like what year was this?
I mean, I finished my uni degree December 2016.
2016. And so the scene still wasn't what it is today.
Very different. Yeah.
So what did your parents say, or did you ever tell your parents that this is what you were going to pursue?
I've kind of always spoken to my dad and my stepmom, because my parents separated, and when I was doing my physio degree, I was living with my dad. He moved to Sydney, so I was mainly just chatting with my dad and my stepmother, and I would always kind of throw the idea around, and there was always a lot of pushback. And it was like, I remember, kind of really agreeing with him, the thought of, oh, you're just going to be like a martial arts gym owner, and I kind of, I thought of like old Taekwondo gyms that had barely any students. And I thought, yeah, that's probably not something that's going to do well. But it's really nice to see that, the sport of jiu-jitsu evolved so much to the point where you actually can make a solid living out of being a gym owner, and it's a legitimate career pathway.
Yeah.
Plus, it's just the fact that it's what I love to do. But I definitely had a lot of pushback from my parents, and for the most part, I really understood where they were coming from, and I really did do my best to respect their wishes. But it was just, I kind of did at the end of the day. I still finished the degree, but the more I tried to respect their wishes and go against what I wanted to do, I think that almost made it worse. The more it made me want to pursue jiu-jitsu full time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of not being honest with yourself.
Yeah, I think that was honestly the case in that instance. The more I tried to move away from jiu-jitsu and making it a full-time career, the more it actually helped. Like it almost like contributed to building the desire of wanting to do jiu-jitsu full-time.
Yeah. So then, and I want to bring this up because I thought I was watching one of your vlogs about when you went to Japan and you were telling the story about your dad's black belt.
Yes.
So because the first martial art that you did wasn't actually jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it was Taekwondo. My dad did Goju-Ryu karate though.
Did you ever do karate? No.
Never did karate though. I wish I did karate instead of Taekwondo, but Taekwondo was just the closest thing that I could find. At the school that I was at, I think I was 7 years old, I believe. They would have like this Taekwondo school would come to our school after hours, and they would run classes there. So I started doing the Taekwondo classes there, and then eventually moved from my school to the actual Taekwondo school and pursued it there. And then after a while, I think after 5.5 years, I think it was just the fact that I didn't enjoy the concept of traditional martial arts. I felt like didn't feel like they were realistic. Sorry to all those people that do traditional martial arts. I just felt like there was this lack of, I don't know, realism missing, I guess.
Were you doing any Taekwondo competitions or Taekwondo sparring?
Never did any competitions, but the sparring, I mean, I guess to their defense, it was because I was 12 at the time and I was doing kids classes, but it was literally a no contact sparring.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, oh, what about when I actually need to, hit someone, or what happens if I get hit? How do I know I can take a hit? I started having those thoughts. And then slowly I kind of, got over Taekwondo, and then I just went into more generic sports. Like I got into basketball. I played basketball for about 7 years, really enjoyed that. And then eventually found my way back into the modern martial arts world.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And do you remember what your first experience with jiu-jitsu was like? Did you get crushed?
Yeah. So my first experience of jiu-jitsu, it was 2009 at this gym. I believe this gym is still up and running, Malvern Health and Fitness in Melbourne. I went there for my first class, and they had this teenage MMA class, and it was actually pretty cool in retrospect. So I was 15. There was a bunch of kids like between 14 and 16, I would say. And they would have a sparring class, which I thought was awesome because, as I was talking about with Taekwondo before, I was never been able to hit someone in sparring, and I've never been able to get hit. So that was like what I really wanted. So I wanted to experience getting hit, and I also wanted to experience, how effective am I like with strikes. And I remember, what was it? Because we did a bunch of, I can't remember how long the rounds were. I think they were 3-minute rounds, and we would just rotate through, and they would just give us, they gave us boxing gloves, but there was, I think the gym just gave us whatever gloves they had there. So some guys had like the really big gloves, some people had small gloves, some people had fingerless gloves. And I think if you wore fingerless gloves, they're like, oh, just don't punch as hard.
Yeah, wow.
But I remember, I knew very vaguely some moves. And I solely attribute this to some of the pro wrestling games that I played on Xbox. There's this one pro wrestling game that I played where when you create your own character, it's got like you can customize the move set of your character. And I absolutely love this because I found it really educational for me. They would have the name of the move on one side, and then on the other side is a little screen with these two guys demonstrating the moves. And I actually found it super interesting. So I could see, like, as an example, like they had the double leg takedown. I don't even think they called it a double leg. I can't remember what they called it. They had a single leg takedown. I think dragon's tail or dragon whip, which is amazing. And then they had chicken wing, kimura. They had Americana. They had very basic arm lock as well. So when I jumped in there, I was pretty much doing like a very budget version of MMA, which was great. Like I was hitting double legs. I remember I armbarred some kid as well. It was great. But then I rolled with this one guy. His name was Nick. He ended up being one of my main training partners there for a while. And unfortunately, he dropped off. But I remember I would go for this. It was like a headlock takedown, a head and arm headlock takedown. I think in judo it's Koshiguruma maybe. I'm not 100% sure. Tito uses that throw a lot. So I used to
from the bulldog position. Over the hip.
Yeah. So I would absolutely love doing that. I actually remember using it in a high school fight once, actually, which is pretty funny. But you got to
digress. You got to tell us. So what happened in this high school fight?
We'll get to that one after. Yeah. So I remember I was throwing a lot of guys with that takedown, and then I hit this one takedown. And you end up in Keizer Gatami scarf hold, and the thing is, this guy was roughly the same size as me. I wasn't good at holding people down for the most part. I thought I was, but I remember eventually, like, I had the head and the tricep grip, and then eventually he managed to slip his elbow and his head, and then he got to my back, and I remember, I don't know why, but I looked up at the coach. The coach happened to be standing near me, and the first thing I said was, "Can I throw elbows from here?" And he's like, "You can, but it's probably not going to end up well for you." So I didn't throw the elbows, and then Nick just hit a rear naked strangle. And then I remember being like, "Oh, how do I get out of that?" And then the coach was like, "Oh, that's jiu-jitsu. Like, if you learn jiu-jitsu, you can learn how to escape those positions. But it's like it's a completely different thing, completely different art. You need to put time into this." So I thought, okay, I'll start coming to this jiu-jitsu class thing. And, that's kind of what started my journey with jiu-jitsu. Predominantly trained nogi for, I think it was the first 6 months. And then early 2010, I started training in the gi as well. And then eventually, got into the culture of jiu-jitsu and competition after that.
Yeah, wow. So, okay, I want to go back to the high school fight. So,
yeah.
You got to tell a story. So, what happened? Why were you in a fight?
I had there was a guy in my year level that I just didn't respond well to his banter. And I couldn't tell, like, sometimes, and going back to autism, I really struggled to discern between banter and genuine insult. So I guess intentionally let it build up, and then there was a point where, and I think he knew I wasn't too happy with it. I think that visibly on my face he could tell times where I'd get annoyed, but I basically instigated the fight. I basically waited for a time where there was no teachers around, and I was 14 years old at the time. Waited for a time where there was no teachers around. There was a free period, and I think he was kind of, I wouldn't want to say picking on someone, but he was kind of, I don't know, kind of harassing another student in the year level. I didn't really care that he was harassing the other student, but I used it as my way to intervene and instigate the fight, to which I did. I pushed his head into, we had these like pretty dense wooden lockers, like they hurt, and I just pushed his head into the locker, and then we just started, the scuffle broke out, a few hands were thrown, and I think just instinctually, anytime there's strikes being thrown, I wanted to close distance, so I did, and I went to the Koshiguruma throw, and then But actually, the same thing happened. The same thing happened. Even though he didn't train jiu-jitsu, we were in this. I had him in the scarf hold position for a while, and eventually he managed to slip his head out, and then we both stood up again. A few more strikes exchanged, and then the fight was broken up. But yeah.
Did you ever get in trouble for it?
No, funnily enough, no. It was because the way our school was set out, we had this like separate year 9 center for the ninth graders. So and for some reason there just weren't any teachers. There's usually teachers there, but there just didn't happen to be any teachers there at the time. So yeah, we just had a very rogue moment, had a good fight, and then it broke up, and then really like ironic actually was I think it was early 2022. I was training at this one jiu-jitsu gym, and their evening class started. They had like a fundamentals class, and guess who walks in for the fundamentals class is that guy. So I thought it was super ironic, but yeah.
Did you end up being friends after, or?
Yeah. Like I would say like funnily enough, that's the funny thing I find with physical altercation is sometimes after the physical altercation you kind of lose that desire to have animosity towards the person.
Yep.
It's like it was almost like therapeutic for us in a way.
Yeah.
You kind of got it out of your system, and then things were like totally fine after that. Yeah, which is funny. And I also think as well there's this thing with physical altercation where if it goes to that place, whether you win or lose the fight, you just know that if you are going to stir up conflict with that individual again, that it's probably going to get to that point. And then you have to ask yourself, are you ready to have like another like actual fight with that person?
Yeah.
So there's that level to it as well, you know.
Definitely.
So
My kids know that because like when they start fighting,
yeah.
I'll be like, all right, you guys want to go?
Yeah.
Get on the mat. I'll
Yeah.
referee you and
Yeah.
let you go for it.
Yeah.
They just stop fighting.
Yeah. Because they know they're going to have to go through.
Somebody's
like,
going to end up in tears.
Yeah,
I tell
yeah.
them like it'll end when somebody taps or there's crying.
Yeah,
And
they have
that's
to
it,
go
and then you
through
separate.
like all that like physical exertion and that I don't know, go through like that whole experience. And a lot of people that go through it enough, they know like, oh, I don't feel like doing that today.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first couple of times they had to learn.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
after that, then it's like, yeah, they actually nowadays when I tell them, yeah, all right, let's go on the mat.
Yeah, they're like,
Then
oh,
they're like, nah. I'm like, oh, okay. Because my wife used to give me shit about it.
Yeah.
She used to be like, why are you encouraging it? And I'm like,
Yeah.
they don't fight anymore.
yeah. It's like even though I always feel irresponsible for promoting it, I do feel like in some contexts, in some instances, it is actually like the perfect conflict resolution.
Well, there is, like, when you actually think about conflict, right? A lot of the times, if it's like, say, and you can even say like in any verbal instance, you know, the only real place that it can ever progress is to physical,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Unless you're like, and even like if you're in a workplace, it could still like the worst thing that could happen was that it progresses to physical, but the consequences is that irrespective of whoever won, somebody's losing their job,
Yeah.
right? But like it's like, you know, when you have when you take away the idea of like, you know, you put space between people because you could, you know, talk shit on social media as an example, then like people were like, yeah, some people just need to be punched in the face. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
let's just be real. Like,
I think as well, a lot of people would, I guess, change the way they approach other individuals in a conversation or rather in a disagreement if they are aware of potential escalation to physical altercation.
yeah.
You know, I think that's the other thing as well.
I-
Whereas most people think that won't happen because it's, you know, culturally unacceptable and the other person can get sued, blah, blah, blah.
I got in trouble once when I was obviously, you know, working in the automotive industry,
Yeah.
and there was a block with a customer, and they were like, you know, going off because essentially, like we provided them what we signed in the contract, and they're like, oh, you know, your salesperson didn't tell me about this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but that's why we have a contract. Like we went through it. I was there. I remember the night because we stayed back. It was like 6:30 at night
Yeah.
to sell you this car, blah, blah, blah. And the guy started threatening me. So then I got in trouble because I just said to him, okay, well, like he's like, you know, saying he's going to come to the dealership and try and fuck me up. I said, okay, come to the dealership. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, come. Like, come try and fuck me up. Like,
Come find out.
And so then obviously when the complaint got escalated, the owner of the business, he calls me and he goes, Johnny, did you really tell this guy to come to the business? He's like, and I'm like, yeah, he said he was going to come fuck me up. I said, yeah, come try it.
Because at the end of the day, it's like, it's almost an insult. It's an insult when someone says that, you know? So it's, you're almost like, oh, well, let's put that to the test.
Yeah, like if you really, let's say if your bark is as good as your bite.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Look, the reality is, it could, I'm wrong for doing that too, because it could be really bad in the sense of like when he comes with 3 other guys, or he comes with a knife.
Yeah.
And he's really going to fuck me up. Like, like that's probably, or he comes with a baseball bat. Like, like they're the sort of things where it's like, as good as I am, I'm still going to get hurt.
There is that element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no winner in that sense. Like when things go really like to that extreme and you're in that like revenge sort of mode, it's just going to be somebody's going to get shanked or like, so like reality is like
someone flips the John Wick switch.
Yeah. Right. It'd be different if it was like, okay, well, like if we're going to sort this out, come meet at this gym, 3 guys in the cage, we'll put gloves on, everybody signs a waiver.
Yeah.
Sort it out. And then, at the end of it, that's the end of it.
I reckon no gloves, just like a valetudo, just like on the mats, just have a proper fight. No gloves.
No gloves. Would you allow the mouth guards and groin guards, or would you say no protective equipment?
If someone wants to wear a mouth guard, then at the very least a mouth guard. At the very least. The reason why I feel like with gloves, it makes it a lot harder to grapple with gloves, especially if you were to have, like, if you're using boxing gloves. Yep. Much harder to grapple with them.
Shin guards too.
Yeah.
Trying to get your legs in. Yeah. Like I have this problem all the time in MMA sparring. It's like, you want to play legs or whatever, or you want to put on a triangle. And
especially if you're someone with a grappling background. I think that stuff really obstructs your ability to be effective as a grappler.
So if you've got any beef, you need to come down to Kumite Jiu Jitsu. That's why it's been named Kumite.
Yes.
All right. So let's get back on track, because I want to talk about when you make this decision that, hey, I'm going to go all in on Jiu Jitsu, right? Now you've gotten to train in some pretty cool places.
Yeah, very lucky to have those opportunities for sure.
So when you finished your physio degree and you decide, hey, I'm going to go all in on jiu-jitsu, where were you training at that point in time?
I was training at Garage Jiu-Jitsu when I finished my physio degree. When I moved to Sydney, though, I was training at a gym called The Dojo. So I was there for a bit, and then I met Levi in Melbourne. I believe it was end of 2014, and I found out he trained like very close to me at Garage, so I decided to move there to train with him, because he was kind of like, for the most part, for the better part of a good few years, he was like pretty much the only person I trained with, and I found that extremely valuable for my progression. Learned a lot from him. But yeah, so I moved to Garage, and when I finished my degree, I was still at Garage, and in Bondi Junction, and we were there up until, I believe it was halfway through 2018.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of like, when you did a lot of training with Levi, what was it specifically that helped you growth and progression? And I the reason why I want to sort of draw on that string is because, there's a lot of people that obviously train jiu-jitsu. And for those that are more serious, obviously, it's sort of nice to get steal some ideas or tips in terms of how they can sort of improve their progress.
Yeah. So, in like, I'll kind of touch more on it like in terms of, I guess, stylistic approach, in terms of just overall jiu-jitsu style. The biggest thing that I picked up from training with Levi, he had particularly 3 things, and I'm talking very broad. Like he was amazing, like very well-rounded, but the 3 things that stood out to me was very good guard passing, very good guard retention, and amazing berimbolo and crab ride game. And so I kind of had this thought to myself, if I can develop those 3 areas of my game, I'm going to be quite far ahead of most people that I compete against. So that was kind of like very broadly speaking, that was my focus while I was at Garage, to develop guard passing, develop guard retention, and develop my berimbolo and crab ride game. And it was a success. It worked very well, and I'm very grateful for that. In terms of the training style, there's a huge emphasis on drilling. I never really liked drilling. But I think for where I was at as a grappler at that time, I felt like it was very beneficial for me. But I would say it was a combination of just drilling and lots of sparring. And the thing is, when I reflect on all those hours of sparring that I would do there at Garage, it was essentially live drilling and specific training. There was, I would pick, a particular move set to work on, and I would just spam that in every single roll. And obviously, depending on the training partner, I would have varying levels of difficulty and resistance. So I feel like training-wise, the way I look at developing a skill, let's say there's a move you've never done before. You obviously first want to drill it with no resistance. The period of time of drilling that, I guess, is usually going to be quite a short period of time before you feel confident in being able to do the move without resistance. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to start applying that move in live sparring. If, let's say, for example, everyone you spar with, they completely shut down the move and smash you, then you'll need to specific train it. And you'll have to actually communicate with your training partner. Hey, can we start in this position? And if it still doesn't work, ask them to dial back the resistance. And, you can, just with communication, you can obviously figure out a way to actually successfully train that move. But if you're fortunate enough that, most of the people in your gym you can manage quite well, then you start just applying it in the sparring. So a great example is when I was working crab ride a lot, I would use the crab ride, get to the back, and then I would just release my opponent from back control, my training partner from back control, and then I would just start again. And I would do that multiple times in a 7-minute round, and we'd have an hour of sparring all up. So, 8 rounds approximately, 8 sevens. So I would just be able to just repeat that on pretty much most of my training partners. And I feel like that was like a huge reason why I actually was able to develop a lot of skills back then. And I still use that method of training now. Helps out a lot.
Yeah, wow. So when you contrast that against the jiu-jitsu instruction that you received over the years, have there been particular styles that have resonated for you? Obviously, that particular style has you found to be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Because I also think, the nature of jiu-jitsu instruction has obviously changed over the years as well, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's sort of, talking about and Sonny Brown loves this, the debate over the ecological approach versus, constraints-based or restraints-based learning, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's technically
positional sparring.
I mean, not just that, but because ecological, for me, a big part of it is developing things intuitively, I guess.
Yep.
With a set of broad goals.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And I think that when you going back to the example of trying to work crab ride, it's in a sense a form of ecological training, just a much broader, less task oriented.
Yeah. Well, you obviously when you're training it, you were setting those constraints for yourself.
Yeah.
You're saying in that role, my goal is to obviously use the crab ride to take the back.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, your entry, would you spam the same entry, or would you try and look at different entries to get to crab ride as an example?
That's where I would have a bit of variability there. Depending on the reactions my opponent was giving me from either top or bottom, I would have to use a different entry. But I would go through phases. I really fondly remember when I first found out about using the K guard in, I believe it was, I'd used the K guard before. We would call it a calf slicer back then, calf slicer entry. But I remember it really started to click with me in terms of using the gable grip to torque the knee and apply inwards pressure to the knee. It was after Worlds 2017. I remember I got back from a training camp at Unity and competed at Worlds, then came back to Australia. And I remember I was really trying to work the K guard then. It wasn't even called K guard back then. We would just call it, I think it was, at the time, they would call, I remember Espen did a video on it. I think he called it the Matrix, but we didn't even call it the Matrix back then. I remember just calling it a calf slicer entry. But I particularly remember really just obsessing over that one entry and just constantly spamming it and then using it to get to the crab ride a lot. But yeah, so for the most part, I would use entries that were appropriate for the reactions my training partner would give me, but every now and then I would get fixated on a very specific entry, such as the matrix or K-guard entry.
Yeah. Okay. And then, just speaking in terms of like all the different rooms that you've gotten to visit over the years, and I don't want to just single out Unity, but I do, think the story, or when you see that YouTube video of everybody.
The 2018 flow grappling video.
Yeah, when everybody's dousing themselves in the cold water and getting back into rolling. But are there any fun stories that you want to share from I guess, each of those little...
Honestly, the shower story is, I remember the temperature and the humidity in that room. I remember finishing some rounds, and you kind of feel like you're almost in a bit of a panic because you just feel like you're overheating, and the shower is just like the best way to just literally cool off. Like there's, I particularly really enjoyed the experiences at the old gym. I think the biggest thing as well for me was that was my first proper international training trip where I was just there to do jiu-jitsu. And I was by myself, and I felt like there was, first time in everything is always something you always remember, right? So I remember that was like a very, very special trip for me. And I think that trip also really contributed to me wanting to also do jiu-jitsu as a career as well. But from getting to train with all these high level guys, to train with the Mia brothers, to learn from Murillo Santana, and to just just watch him sparring, watch him show technique, and hear, I guess, like just the way he explains technique as well. That was very, very important for me, and I found that extremely beneficial.
Did you ever? There's two questions here. So the first one is, when you get to go to those rooms, did you ever feel like you have a bit of imposter syndrome being there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, not necessarily being there. I mean, I remember, almost every time I was there, I was like, look, I know I'm not as good as these guys, but we're all different levels, and we're just everyone's here to improve, I guess. So I definitely did not feel worthy of the level, but it didn't act as like a barrier. I was aware of it, but it wasn't like a constraint.
Well, it allows you to elevate yourself to that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you do, I guess, on a subconscious level, you end up being forced to level up, as much as you can to meet their standard. So.
And the second part of the second question I had was a more practical question. How are you funding yourself through this?
How was I funding myself?
Yeah, were you working other jobs? Or were you just trying to teach and make money that way?
The first time, in short, yes. Like the first time I was there, I was working at a furniture store, in Sydney,
How was that?
that was interesting. I much prefer working there than at the bar. I used to work at this one bar, the Beresford Hotel in Surrey Hills. I got over it. I mean, I was there. I think it was way too long for me. I was there for a little over a year, and that was plenty of time there. And then I decided I wanted a more, less crazy job. So I decided to pick furniture store. It was actually right across the road from Garage Jiu Jitsu.
Okay.
Right across the street. Sorry, it was in Oxford Street.
Yep.
So yeah, I enjoyed my time there. And then
were you selling furniture, or what were you doing?
Look, for some reason they put me on sales. I'm literally the worst person to put on in sales. For the most part, I was working in the stock room, out of sight, and just doing my own thing. And then sometimes I would go off site to help, like with deliveries for furniture as well.
Yep.
And every now and then they would get me to assemble like display furniture. That was something I really enjoyed as well, just putting together a bunk bed or putting up a mirror or something like that, or a cupboard. That was my favorite part of the job. It would burn a lot of time as well.
So you'd be there just like slowly putting something together. All right, guys, I'm off to jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah. There were a few times where I accidentally damaged some of the furniture, in the process of putting it together, but they were fine with it.
Yep.
At least I think they were.
Did you tell them, or did you?
Oh yeah, I told them.
Okay.
I told them. remember I was putting up a mirror and I accidentally scraped it on like a nail or a screw.
Oh.
But luckily that wasn't the part of the mirror that was actually going to be up on display.
Okay.
So
it was
all
behind
good.
it. Yeah. Fair enough. So there was bartending.
It wasn't even bartending. It was I was working as a glassy, a barback.
Oh, so just like literally pick up the glasses and wash them.
Yeah. Picking up glasses, washing them, occasionally getting harassed by some of the people working there, and then that was it.
What kind of harassment are we talking?
It was usually an offhand. Actually, you know what? It's probably not even not even worth me saying on this podcast. I don't know how it'll be received. You may or may not edit this out.
I don't edit anything. Yeah, just tell the story. I don't care. Fucking cancel me. I don't give a fuck. So an offhand comment. Was it from a male or a female?
So it would be both.
Oh,
But like
come on, just say it.
It wouldn't bother me if it was from a female.
Yeah.
But I would sometimes work Sunday evenings there, and I would be put on the Sunday evening shift against my will, and I was very desperate to pick up shifts. And I'm sure you know Sunday evening at some places is it's a very particular night, and so I had this one instance where this dude on a Sunday evening, he was a bit drunk, and his earphones, got stuck in between like the gaps of one of the tables outside. It was in the beer garden, and he asked me to help him pull it out. So I spent a bit of time like fishing it out, and it was obviously much smaller gaps than these gaps. So I pulled it out and handed it to him, and he was over the moon that I retrieved his headphones. And this dude, he's like middle-aged dude, like, you know, beard like this, you know, stubbly beard, grabs me, hugs me, and then gives me a kiss on the neck. And I could feel the dude's stubble pressing into my neck. And I felt so angry.
You were violated.
Yeah, I felt violated. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm done.
Really encroached the personal space.
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
I saw some things working on those Sunday nights that I really did not have to see.
Yeah.
I really did not have to see.
Yeah, well, if it was a female in that circumstance,
Oh man, yeah.
right? Like,
yeah,
you'd have been like, "What the fuck?" Like,
yeah,
dude.
Well, the thing is, most of the women that worked there, from memory, they were predominantly just bartending or waiting. I wouldn't see many of the girls I don't think I saw any of the girls doing working as a glassy. I'm not sure if that's changed now.
Yeah,
but yeah, I kind of feel like the glassies in that context, they're kind of like frontline, you know, infantry.
Yeah, that's right. First line of defense.
Yeah, first line of defense.
Cannon fodder.
Yeah, and then like working as a bartender, it's like, look, I don't want to say they're like the Air Force, but you know they're not on the ground as much.
They're a step above,
but they're still going through it. Like I would sometimes walk past the bar and I would see them just completely like flooded with customers and pouring drinks at like the speed of sound.
Yeah.
You know, so well, obviously it wasn't easy for them as well.
So then, so those jobs, you know, obviously you saved up.
Yeah.
To then decide, okay, I'm going to go over and spend time overseas.
Yeah.
To learn. How did was it easy to pick where you wanted to go? Was that just because of the Levi connection that you decided to go to those rooms?
So my the first ever time I trained overseas, it was in Brazil. It was for a family trip because, as you know, mum's side of the family is from Brazil. So I knew from the first trip that Checkmat was obviously a very high level gym, and I really liked Checkmat. But then I was also thinking, okay, I want to also experience some other gyms. I also want to train in the US because I know that US is the hub for jiu-jitsu as well. So I was thinking, okay, well, I've trained at Checkmat before, and I was thinking initially of Allianz because I really liked particularly watching Lucas Lepre and Michael Lange.
Yep.
I knew that Allianz was predominantly in Brazil, so I thought, okay, maybe I would have the choice of, at the time it was Cabrinhas or Marcelo Garcia's. And I couldn't really tell. I absolutely loved the idea of training at either of those gyms. And when I met Levi, I remember at the time, this is actually before he would actually go to do these trips at Unity, he would also train at Cabrinhas. And believe it or not, Cabrinha showed him some very good stuff as well. Levi's game was, it definitely changed when he started going under the tutelage of Murillo, but there's a lot of similarities with some of the things that Cabrinha would show him. But you could tell that from his time training at Cabrinha's, he leveled up a lot. So I was pretty intent actually initially on going to Cabrinha's. And then I remember I was chatting with him about the trip, and I almost looked at it like I needed to train first at Cabrinha's to progress the training at Unity. I almost looked at it like that, and he said, don't worry about it. You're going to get so good training at Unity. This is the place to be. And then he said, I'll put in a good word for you with Murillo, and you'll really enjoy the training and you'll benefit a lot from that training trip. And he was very right about that, and I'm very grateful that he actually took the time to actually convince me to choose to train over there. And I think I was there from not consistently, but I trained there 2016, 2017 and 2019, and then we had COVID in 2020.
Out of curiosity, because you've gotten to obviously visit plenty of training rooms, have you ever had a bad experience at a training room? And you don't have to name names, but I'm just curious about, in terms of like...
Yeah, like these are like experiences where like I still go back to the gym and I still kind of laugh it off, but I won't name the gym or the guy, but I was at this gym in 2018. It wasn't Unity because I didn't do a training trip to Unity in 2018. So it's quite safe that it wasn't Unity, but for those who followed my training journey in 2018, you'll probably know what gym it was. It was in Brazil. Trained at this one gym where there was this dude that was, and mind you, I was at the time below 70 kilos.
Yep.
So I was, I'm 78 kilos now, so I was 68 kilos.
You hide it well.
Yeah, I hide it well.
You do, you do,
right?
Like I would have thought you were my weight, but you got 10 kilos. I don't feel so bad now that I got fucking smashed.
Sleeper build. So this guy was, I think he was, I can't tell if he was ultra or super heavyweight. He was, he was over the 100 kilo mark, and he was actually pretty good. I remember seeing on his Instagram, he's really dangerous with straight ankle locks, knee bars, and toe holds. And once the nogi scene really started to break out, then he started to get really good at heel hooks as well. But this is 2018, and nogi obviously had its breakout, I would say 2016, 2017. But 2018, it was still not as well known. But he was really trying to get into nogi and work on his nogi. At this trip where I was there, I was there to train in the gi, not a nogi. So I look over and this dude that's well over heavyweight is asking me to train, and he wanted me to train nogi, and I didn't want to train nogi, and I also didn't want to train with him, especially because I saw him being like rough. Quite a unsafe training partner. So I declined, and there's a big thing I'm sure you've heard with Brazilians not liking foreigners, using the term gringo. So he was saying in Portuguese that I'm a scared gringo, and it was one of the few times where I honestly didn't care because I had such a good training room there. I was so happy with the training partners that I had there. I did not care about like his opinion on me not wanting to roll with him.
Yeah.
And I actually remember asking one of the guys there, one of the senior guys there, really top. He's one of the top dogs at this gym. I said, "Do I really need to roll with this guy?" And he's like, "No." Yeah. And I was like, "Okay, well that kind of clears my conscience a bit with that." But I watched him actually. He he was actually bragging to me about how he submitted. I think it was Nogi Europeans. He submitted Oliver Taza with a straight ankle lock, and then he was telling me that Oliver Taza was crying afterwards, and then he proceeded to hit a double bicep flex after he told me that story.
Yeah,
and then after that he looked me dead in the eyes and he's like, "Tomorrow we're gonna roll, and I'm gonna break your foot." And I was like, "Okay," and then I just didn't roll.
Yeah, why the fuck would you roll with a guy like that?
Yeah, honestly.
That's crazy. There's some crazy people.
If I would like to think that if that was me now, much more experience and heavier, still not a heavyweight obviously, but I'd probably would have accepted that role initially.
Yeah, wow.
And then who knows what would have happened after that. Maybe I would have gotten injured and then decided not to roll with him, or maybe it would have actually just been a really good training round and I would have enjoyed training with him. I don't know.
It's hard to say.
Hard to say. Yeah.
I always find, like, I'm fortunate I get to bounce around a bit, right?
Yeah.
So, but like I always bring in a very like relaxed sort of demeanor. Like I'm not coming in to like, challenge people and shit like that. It's like, no, let's just play.
Yeah.
Like keep it playful. Whatever happens, happens. And then it's fun,
Yeah.
Like if you come into it with the right attitude, like there's very few places I've been where like there's been places where people have tried to put it on me and then it's like, okay, you meet that and you respect that.
Yeah.
But like, I think I've also got enough life experience to be able to go and say, hey, like that's actually not very safe.
Yeah.
If it's not safe, it's not safe. Like,
Yeah.
let's dial it back.
Yeah.
Unless you want to just fucking fight.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
that's
so-
one of those
so
examples, right? When the guys say, I'm going to, tomorrow we roll, I'm going to break your foot. Like,
Yeah.
well, how about we just have a fucking fight then? Like,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
really training
Yeah,
when
yeah.
they're saying that they're going to break your foot.
Yeah. It's like, now I can come prepared for this tomorrow, and you might not like that.
The guy, you can be like, meet me here. Yeah. Ari just doesn't turn up. Guy's waiting.
But yeah, I heard I won't name the guy, but I heard some stories later about that guy. How I think he was, I don't know, not involved with the nicest crowd in Brazil as well. Yeah, so I don't know. It made sense. I also had this other experience at another gym where it was in the States. I was rolling with this guy, and he was, again, like, I don't know what it is with like the heavier dudes really trying to put it on me. It's pretty funny. But this dude was, again, like big solid dude, and he is in shape as well for his size. And I remember he tried to jump a flying triangle on me. And luckily I was okay. But I remember thinking, I actually remember mentioning to him, I'm like, oh, that's not safe. And he just completely ignored the comment and just continued rolling.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, it was bad. But again, luckily, like it seems like someone's looking out for me because I did not get injured, thankfully. Yeah. Stuff like that is scary, especially when you're overseas.
Yeah, because there's no health cover.
Yeah,
I feel like like people always often talk about like little man syndrome, where
Yeah.
like the little guys like they can be really like aggressive or whatever.
Yeah,
But I think
it's
there's like
necessary for little guys, because if they tone it down against a bigger guy, there's a chance they suffer.
Yeah. But I think
Yeah.
I think there on the flip side, and if I'm wrong, tell me. But like I think there's a big man syndrome where it's like like there's it's like you think of like a big like mastiff or a bulldog, right?
Yes.
And when they're a puppy, like they're small.
Yeah.
And when they get bigger, some of them still carry that mentality
Oh, that
of
they're
being this small.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I feel like there are big guys that roll that think they're
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
that they can like
100%.
and I've had this experience, I had a guy that was like maybe like say 120 kilos
Yeah.
doing like a pressure cartwheel pass on me, like, had the body lock and just like his legs are up in the air, all the weight's on my stomach. I'm just like, oh. and like, what do you want me to say to that after?
Yeah.
Like, like
Good job.
Yeah, like, yeah, it fucking hurt. Like,
yeah, that sucks.
that sucks.
I guess people really need to like read their training partner as well. You can sort of tell if your training partner in general, I guess, can withstand certain moves or not. You know, like you have to really read the room, so to speak. And I guess it's also contextual as well. Are you having a hard roll or a light roll? There's things that I think that a lot of people, especially if they're big and not even big guys, even smaller guys, where they should
Guys on girls, like that's another
that,
example.
That is actually a huge, a really important one. That's something that I'm particularly a lot more like clued into because of my wife Hope, because like she's spoken to me a lot about that, just instances with her training with other guys, or even if it's me training with her, or just things like that. So that is a very real thing. Yeah.
I want to ask you about this because as a dad, right? When it comes to your child in jiu-jitsu, like, do you have any thoughts around that? And the reason why I ask this is because there's probably a lot of guys that get to that point in life where they have kids, and if they train jiu-jitsu or martial arts themselves, it's like I'm very big on this idea that you don't want to give your kids especially if you love something so much, you don't want to give your kids a reason to hate it. And you know, the way that I sort of put this is like, you know, if my child or my children are competing for my attention, because I want to do this and they want to spend time with me, then they're probably going to have a negative association. with it, right? So I'm a little bit curious, you know, how you've balanced that over the years as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is not making it seem like a necessity or like a compulsory thing to go to jiu-jitsu. I think if jiu-jitsu for your kids is just this thing where you have the option of doing it or you can do something else, as opposed to you must be at the gym, you must be doing this. I think that is for me, that's the number one thing. I think if you make it compulsory, there is going to be this tendency to start resenting whatever activity that activity is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, like, I guess that's my mentality of it so far at the very least. And then I guess the other thing as well is, if you do have a kid that's really upset, like really loves jiu-jitsu, also making sure that they don't completely base their entire life and identity around that. Because that is something, you know, like at the very start of this podcast, I introduced myself and I pretty much just based myself on jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
That's actually something I'm trying to work on, is actually trying to detach my identity from jiu-jitsu, because I think it's not a healthy thing to base your identity off of something that is of this world, and that is something that is just an activity. You know, it's just a thing that we do, as opposed to something that makes you who you actually are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, I want to pull on that thread a little bit more. So when you say that, because and I've talked about this on podcasts before, where, you know, you go to a function and let's say it's, you know, a kid's birthday party and you're chatting to other dads, and it's like the first question that most dads will ask you is like, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, we always like focus on this real material thing, and then we judge people based on what is their material occupation.
Yeah.
So when you say you want to try and detach yourself from that, what do you sort of value as a person, so to speak? So like I guess, you know, another way to look at that question is like, let's say, you know, tomorrow's you're on your deathbed and like people are writing your eulogy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is it that you want people to be saying or talking about?
Oh man, I'm trying not to reference anything about jiu-jitsu.
Really? Really? You wouldn't want the jiu-jitsu to be referenced at all?
I mean, I would say, because again, it's just this
thing
that you know, that we do, as opposed to as something that is like what you are intrinsically. I guess like a quality that you have that you use in jiu-jitsu. So I don't know, like attention to detail, stuff like this. Or, I mean, attention to detail is probably not something you want written on your eulogy. You get a great eye for detail.
Ari picked on me about my lack of attention to detail.
Yeah, I think try not to sound like I don't know, like what's the word, cliche, but at the end of the day, one of the things that I guess what I'm starting to realize is one of the things that seems to be priceless in value is where you're able to do something that benefits someone else, or I guess enjoy something with someone else or a bunch of other people. So in the context of jiu-jitsu, teaching someone jiu-jitsu to the point where they really start to enjoy jiu-jitsu, and now it's this thing where they can look forward to coming to jiu-jitsu after a big day of work, or after, I don't know, time off of training, you know, giving someone this ability to enjoy a hobby that is one of their main outlets and source of relief in life.
Yeah,
that's obviously a very nice thing to be able to do for someone. Or I don't know, let's say your gym becomes very successful, and you can then start helping out all the people that, you know, maybe the guys that are training full time in your gym.
Yep.
So doing things where you're you're actually not just benefiting yourself, but eventually benefiting other people. I think that's however you would describe that in a eulogy, I guess.
I think when I'm listening to you describe it like that,
Yeah.
it's like
I'm bad at describing things.
it's not just So what's important is like not the imparting of technique, so to
Yeah.
speak. It's actually the passing on that spirit,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's probably a really nice way to sort of think about that.
Yeah. I think like one of my friends from Sydney Wrestling Academy, one of the owners, Lucas Canada, I'm sure you know him.
Shout out, Lucas.
He's
He's competing on CGI.
Yeah, competing on CGI.
This will be out next week. So,
he's
any predictions?
I'm not just saying it because he's my friend, but I think he's gonna have like a Lockie Giles, Craig Jones moment. Like people are
Break out.
Like, what the hell? I really think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
Yes, that's it.
But one thing that and mind you, I think in my earlier stages, and when I say early stages of jiu-jitsu journey, I'm also actually talking about earlier stages of my black belt career. I really was like quite selfish with my approach to jiu-jitsu. I always had this mentality of I'm at this gym, I'm here to benefit. I'm here to benefit from this gym, and I'm sure like I can. In the process, maybe I'll help a few people, but we're all here solely for ourselves, sort of thing. Like, I don't know, I guess quite a negative mentality. But one thing that would always kind of throw me off guard is when I'd hear him speak and he would talk about just being able to enjoy success with your friends, whether it's money or even fame, just, you know, sharing in that success with your friends that you've worked with from the very beginning. And like I can't remember specifics of how he's said that, but I do know that's something that he's brought up a lot, and that's always really stuck with me. And I think that is something that is regardless of your professional pursuit, you should be looking at doing something that has that effect.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, you know.
Yeah, who can you bring along the way?
Yeah. You know, like kind of unrelated, but when we started doing like the Kumite Jiu Jitsu training, I mean, it's been going on for a while, but when I started running the competition sessions and really trying to put emphasis on trying to bring up the level of everyone in the room as opposed to just myself, I remember there's a song that would play. It's so ridiculous. It's called "I Want a Ferrari," and in the lyrics, I've touched on it actually in one of my vlogs, but the lyrics. The guy is basically saying he wants to go to the mall and just buy heaps of bling for all of his friends. and I was like, oh, that's actually a really cool thing. Just this idea of reaching the pinnacle of success in whatever your pursuit is, and then just, you know, sharing that success, sharing the fruits of that success with all your friends that have helped you get there.
Yeah.
That's honestly like the peak goals for me at least.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's a really good outlook to have.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, what are you going to remember? You don't remember the material things.
Yeah.
You remember the experiences.
Yeah.
You know,
100%. And if you have something, that is, if you do end up having a material thing, you can obviously enjoy it on your own, but it's just everything is just so much better when you enjoy it with other people, whether it's family or whether it's close friends. It's one thing if you're just by yourself enjoying whatever you've won with your success, but it's another thing when other people with you that mean something to you can enjoy that with you.
Yeah.
It just hits different. Yeah.
So, talk to us a little bit about the whole, genesis of Kumite. You know, obviously, you guys were doing a lot of competition sessions anyway, and then finally decided, hey, it's the right time to pull the trigger and start a gym.
Yeah. So I look at the origins of Kumite. If anything, I look at it almost actually in the days of garage jiu-jitsu, in the sense that I always really wanted to have training sessions that were really focused on just leveling up to become a world-class jiu-jitsu athlete. And I remember when we started training at open sparring, we all met then. So when I say we, it was myself, Hope, Varun, Lucas, I don't know if you've met him, Big Tommy Strem.
No.
He's not as active in the scene, but he's one of the OG top dogs. And then like I mentioned, Lucas, and then also Levi. We all went to this gym called Open Sparring, and we really liked the idea of it. The name was very fitting, Open Sparring. You can just come in and just train, just spar with each other. And for me, like, one of the best ways of training is some form of sparring, whether it's competition sparring or specific sparring, positional sparring. You know, the progress really does lie in sparring for the bulk of it, in my opinion. So I really like the idea of it. And we all of our backgrounds, we had all been kicked out of our gyms for like separate reasons. And I also just want to say, like, I think none of us have animosity to, and I'm I actually speak for, I would say for all of us, none of us have animosity to the gyms we were kicked from. We're just in different stages of our lives and different goals. Some people's goals were more business goals. Ours was more chasing the competition thing. So I definitely understand it. But going back to that, we decided we would call ourselves the Resistance, because at the time we felt like we were kind of like victim to politics of jiu-jitsu. And so we felt like we were like rebelling against jiu-jitsu politics. And to be fair, you know, after a few years, the dynamic of jiu-jitsu politics really changed. Back then, it would be impossible for me to contract at different gyms as a coach. And fast forward, you know, after COVID, I was doing that and actually making a very good living, thankfully. You know, so things did change. But we started off as the Resistance, and we would just have a very informal training session. I'd always think of it as like Cicero Costa style training. Just go in, drill and roll, and get good. And that's honestly what happened. And we would do that every day. We then eventually found, and this is through Hope, because Hope used to teach and train full time at my BJJ in Camperdown, and she met these guys. We call them the Koreans because they are Koreans, Young and Jin.
Yep.
And they opened up their own my BJJ in Lidcombe in Westside, so they call it a Westside Jiu Jitsu. And she introduced me to them, and she actually managed to tee up some training sessions with them, and we'd go in the daytime, and then the evening sessions we'd train at Open Sparring. So we had this nice little split, and I really liked it because both of the gyms had white mats, so it just felt like I was at the same gym. But eventually, I believe it was end of 2018, early 2019, I moved to Melbourne. I wanted just a change of scenery training-wise, and I felt like for that particular time of my journey, training in Melbourne was the place to be for me. And then when we moved back to Sydney after COVID, I noticed that most of the training shifted from Open Sparring to Westside. From my understanding, Open Sparring didn't want to have like the open mat competition style format. They wanted to shift it more to a more structured class training format, which is fair enough. So the daytime session, all the sessions became daytime sessions at Westside. And I believe around this time, this is where Josh started training at Open Sparring and at Westside. And the Resistance thing, just we kind of stopped. We stopped doing the Resistance thing. Main reason why was because we were. I mean, that's actually a whole nother story. No conflict actually. It was actually to do with someone else that tried to jump on board as an investor.
Oh wow!
And this dude basically just like completely destroyed the Resistance himself. Almost sounds like if you put your tinfoil hat on, it was like a conspiracy, work, like an inside job, you know. But anyway, so Resistance wasn't really a thing. But Josh is really creative with names. He he decided to call it the secret Kumite in the Woods.
Yeah.
Now, I thought that it was the woods because have you been to Westside?
No.
So across the road from the gym, there's a cemetery, and it's kind of like a forest.
Yeah.
So that was my rationale. I think that's the case. I need to double check with Josh if that's why it's called Secret Kumite in the Woods. Because I remember him.
Well, it sounds better than Secret Kumite in the cemetery.
Secret Kumite in the cemetery. Secret Kumite in the underworld. But that's how the Kumite thing kicked off. And I actually really like the name as well, because he also took a bit of inspiration from Bloodsport, the Kumite. So I'm all for that. And we just called the daytime sessions the Secret Kumite. Eventually, Josh and I, we just really enjoyed working with each other, like similar sense of humor, and just we both want to get good at jiu-jitsu and also enjoy the jiu-jitsu lifestyle. So we started the the Secret Kumite Patreon.
Yep.
And then after a while, I remember we went to Worlds last year, and afterwards after we competed, and we were kind of, I don't know, a bit dissatisfied with just the training situation, and it kind of occurred to me I really need to start putting effort into the people that I train with to build them up, because at the end of the day, if your training partners don't get good, then it's also quite hard for you to get good as well, and it's very easy for the level of the entire room to just stagnate. It's that what's that quote where it's like, if you go alone, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Yeah. So that was really like that really resonated with me. So at Westside, I decided for us to really start focusing on having more structure to our training sessions, because we reached this point during COVID where we would just have this open mat, and it would just be drilling then sparring, and it was you'd feel like you're in this like weird drilling limbo where you're just drilling for hours on end, and then by the time it's training, you're so like mentally burnt out you don't want to train. So a lot of people would actually stop coming to those sessions, because instead of starting at 12, sometimes would start at like 2 or 3 o'clock. It would get ridiculous. So I decided to, take charge of that, add some structure to the sessions, and then, suddenly the numbers started growing, and then, I was investing more in teaching people technique and helping people out individually. People started to get better. People started to compete better, and then before we knew it, it became a room where, pretty much everyone you're rolling with became a very solid role. And then going forward, we thought, we're all teaching at different gyms. We're putting, almost full-time weeks of work into teaching. We may as well be doing this at our own gym. It reached that point where we thought it's just a bit silly just doing this at all these separate gyms. We may as well, if we're putting in the time, may as well have it at your own gym. And so that's where we, decided to actually open up the Kumite, and it's not a secret anymore, so it's just the Kumite now.
Yeah. All right. One last little question for you, because I'm always curious about how some of these things work.
Yeah.
So you've got an instructional on Fanatics, BJJ Fanatics.
I've a retention, upper, lower. I've got four. I think 4 now. Yeah.
How did that? How did those opportunities come about?
Thankfully, you know how. I mean, the smartest way of answering that, it came about by not ever letting Lachlan Giles pass my guard. And then it got to a point where he thought, okay, I need you to do an instructional for me.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, in reality, no. He was when I was like very underweight, he could pass my guard. I have it on video, but they don't count, Lachlan. They never count.
Yeah, outsized him.
Yeah. No, but Lockie was very, very generous to give me that opportunity, because I would say, like, I attribute the fact that I have this right here, and I've been able to invest in opening my own gym, and I've been able to provide for myself and my family. A huge part of this is literally just because of from an act of generosity from Lockie. So actually,
shout out,
a massive thank you to you, Lockie. But he approached me a while back, and he said, look, like, I've been making instructionals, and actually think it's a very good career pathway is selling online content. and you know, it's something that could really benefit you, because obviously jiu-jitsu athletes don't make a lot of money, and I had no idea what to expect in terms of actually earning money from the instructional. So I thought, yeah, well, why not? And it was actually quite a fun process as well. And yeah, so after we made that instructional and it went live, that was kind of my foot in the door with BJJ Fanatics. Got in touch with Michael Zenga and just spoke to him a bit. And I said, look, if you're interested, I'd love to do more instructionals. And he was really happy to have me on board. So yeah, so now I whenever I get the time, I film instructional content and then eventually compile it into a full instructional and send it through to Fanatics. Yeah. So yeah, it's like it is like a genuine career pathway. Like I was earning pretty well, like without, you know, having the gym set up. So it's one of those things where you don't even need to actually have a gym to earn a living with jiu-jitsu now. You can solely do it through instructionals. I would say I would preface it though. You want to have like a little bit of a following, I guess, on social media. Like I imagine if I didn't work with Lachlan and I just made my own instructionals, I'm not sure if I would have done as well in the instructional market.
You need that, you need that little, that base push.
Yeah, that base push. Like a lot of people, like internationally, just know me solely because of that instructional. But as a result of that collaboration with Lockie, they've seen the other content I've put out. Yeah. So yeah, but this is honestly not the first time Lockie's done this act of generosity for someone in the scene, where he kind of takes his he shares a bit of his limelight, and then before you know it, the other person has literally got an ability to provide for themselves, or in my case, family. Yep. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
really
thing.
Cool. Yeah.
That goes back to, you know, what we're saying about bringing people along the journey, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say he's kind of the epitome
passed
of that
spirit to you.
Yeah, he really has in that sense. And the thing is, the guy never asks for anything in return. He doesn't expect you to like stay at, like, he didn't expect me to stay at Absolute or be there full time or to represent the gym or something. He's just happy to have us there, you know. So it's, really appreciate him for that. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know, we've done quite a almost a couple of hours. But if people want to find you, obviously at Ariel Tabak BJJ.
Yep.
Secret Kumite on Patreon. Yes. Ariel Tabak BJJ on YouTube.
Oh yeah, on YouTube. Yeah, search Ariel Tabak BJJ. The actual channel name is just Ariel Tabak. But yeah, you search Ariel Tabak BJJ, it should get you there as well.
Is there anything else that we need to plug?
Else?
BJJ Fanatics.
BJJ Fanatics. Yeah.
Sponsors? You got any sponsors we need to plug?
Oh yeah, actually, I recently signed up with Alchemical Movement. They're a jiu-jitsu, I would say, or rather grappling apparel and gear brand. Not sure exactly where they're based.
They're up north somewhere.
Up north.
I will get them on the podcast at some time, because
awesome.
I think it's interesting. You know, I want to know more about what they do. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that'll be a really good podcast. But they make like pretty much 100% natural clothing, which, if you think about it, when you're sweating and your pores are open, you don't know what's going into your pores. So it's something to factor in. Go natty, as they say. So that's something that's really something I really appreciate, and something that or rather, they're a brand that I really wanted to work with because of that. Plus, as well, their gis, especially for the gi community, they do this it's like unbleached white gi. It is awesome. It's awesome. It's like old school judo gi. It's really cool. So yeah, 10 out of 10 recommend.
Anyone else?
Anyone else? I'm just trying to think. Not off the top of my head. I haven't been in the sponsorship scene for a while. So yeah, that's about it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you guys.